Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and I want to welcome you to How to Get an Agent. I think this is an important topic for people to be thinking about. If you've already written one or two screenplays, you're already, on the verge of this. It's like you should start looking forward to what's going to happen at that point and what do you need to make it happen. Right? You don't have to have the perfect screenplays. You don't have to have the ultimate screenplays or have written 10 screenplays to start thinking about getting an agent. You can do that today. So you're in the right place here. Here's what we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about getting ready for an agent or manager. And this has to do with two things, as you'll see when we get there. First, it has to do with you. Are you ready? And what does it take to get ready? Because it's not just about that one moment when they sign you. And this is just something to keep in mind. A lot of times people see this as the end goal. I'm going to get an agent and then everything's going to work. The truth is you'll get an agent and then your job is to go to work. Right? Your job at that point is to be able to constantly step into whatever role is needed, do whatever writing is necessary, make the deals, move forward, right? And if you can do that at that point, if you can work well with an agent or manager, you have such a great chance of real success in this industry. Now, second thing we'll talk about is the barriers. And the reason we'll look at the barriers is because if you know what might be standing in the way, you have control of it. You can implement a strategy to try to deal with that. Third, we'll talk about the difference between agents and managers and why this is important. A lot of times people will say to me, hey, I want an agent. And I'll go, okay, what do you want that agent to do? And then they will describe a manager. So when we get there, I'll show you the difference. All of this information, everything we're doing here came from about 150 interviews that I did with agents and managers. I started doing those about 15 years ago. The last interview that I did was about 2 months ago. It was just before we went into this phase of the game. And then we'll talk about how to be a great client, because this is what agents and managers are looking for. And finally, we'll discuss the upcoming class, Writing Incredible Movies, for those of you who would like to achieve that goal and would like to be seen as somebody in this industry who writes incredible movies. So let's jump into it. Getting ready for an agent or manager. Let me tell you where this conversation came from. I'm interviewing this agent in front of an audience of about, I don't know, 50 or 60 screenwriters. And I said, so what do you think is the biggest problem that face writers who are trying to get an agent or manager? And he said, they're not ready. And he was very direct, very to the point. And I'm like, what do you mean they're not ready? He says, they're not ready to do business. They're not ready, to come into this industry. And so that shifted how I started thinking about things. And we've had now, at least 130, 140 writers in our alumni who have gotten agents or managers. And one of the reasons why was because of this right here. So first thing you need to know, it's not about being lucky. I was doing something in Kansas City. There was a small conference there and I was speaking at it. And this one guy kept saying over and over, yeah, I just need to get lucky, man. I just need to get lucky. It's not about that. That's not how anybody gets an agent or manager. There may be one moment of luck that happens at the end, right? You may have that thing where somebody just happened to run into you and that. But I would say it's a whole different game. If you are dependent on luck, the problem is that that is out of your control. Luck is not something that's a strategy. Please know. So getting an agent takes steps. It's a series of steps that happen over time. You are going to systematically build yourself into somebody that this whole industry wants to work with, right? And that is a worthwhile thing. It's something that is in your control, something you can do things about. I'd say the most important step that you're going to be taking is what I'm calling being ready for an agent or manager. Everything we're talking about today is what it takes to be ready. And you're either in one or two spots right now. You either are ready, and you'll be able to tell that by all the things that we talk about today. You know, do you fit every one of those descriptions? Are you completely prepared? All of that. Or you can get ready. And, you know, this again is 100% in your control. And that's what I'm always looking for. How do we set it up so that you have a real chance of success because you're doing the right things, not because you happen to run into the big agent while you're on the airplane or something. So anyone that's already succeeded, I want you to know, anybody who has an agent right now, they went through everything we're going to talk about. So please don't think, oh yeah, but you know, I can't do that or any of those kinds of things. Those people did it. That means you can do it. And just so you know, in the midst of all the interviews I did with A-list screenwriters, which I think I've interviewed about 125 of those, almost every single time I ask them, how did you break in and how did you start? Right? And the reason I ask how you broke in was because I want the audience to hear another pathway to get in the door. The reason I ask how you started is because they, you know, a lot of times the way they started is the way you started. A lot of times they just, you know, they had an idea and they thought, you know what, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could write a movie. And somewhere in there, they went, wow, this is great. And they started to love it and they started to do it a lot. And after a while, they did what it took to become a great writer and to get completely ready to have an agent or manager and ready for this industry. So that's the other way to interpret this. You're not just getting ready for them, you are getting ready for this industry. So, barriers. And I want to talk about these because most of the time when somebody tells me, you know, there's something that's keeping them from succeeding, there's something that keeps them from getting an agent or a manager. When somebody says that kind of thing, what they almost always point to is no one has gotten my script to that agent or manager. I view these barriers differently, and I view these barriers again from the writers that we've helped get agents and managers, the writers that we have worked with who then later on got agents or managers, and what agents said. So first barrier, and this is from the agent's perspective, is the lack of marketable projects. When I actually had this happen a week ago, I'm on the phone with a guy who called me up and said, you know, I need your help in getting an agent. And I said, okay, pitch me your best script. And he talked for 2.5 minutes. And I said, okay, that one's not marketable. Pitch me another one. And this time do it in 2 sentences. And he couldn't do it. Now, the problem with that is inside this industry, the way you get people to read your script is you have a very concise, very powerful pitch that's called a high concept, right? He had none of those. So right off the bat, the big barrier he had was he just didn't have any marketable projects. I never got a chance to see whether his writing was good or not because there wasn't anything that would be worth taking that next step with, right? And this is important to know. Anytime you hand an agent or a manager a project, if it's not highly marketable, if it can't be pitched very precisely and quickly and easily, that's not something they can sell. So, you know, this is the number one barrier, in my opinion, because of that. And it separates, you know, the people who are successful getting agents and managers from the ones who don't. Let me just tell you one other quick story. We have a writer who she loved writing stories that she called small stories. And she'd write entire screenplays from them. She'd probably written 8 or 9 of them. And one day she had this realization. She said, I'm a good enough writer, but none of my projects can sell. So she stopped at that point. She brainstormed a whole bunch of hooks and finally came up with an idea. She spent 3 months writing it using all the skills that we had worked with her on, and got it into the final draft big break contest. She ended up winning first place for that particular project, and ended up with 2 managers who read it within a week. Because it was such a marketable project, because the pitch was so strong, both of them wanted to represent her. Right? I'm telling you that because a lot of times when you tell this to people, hey, the projects aren't marketable, they go, oh, that's it, that's the end. And it's like, no, it's not. That's now you realizing, you know what, all you've got to do is take one step and everything changes. We've had so many people that this one thing, when they turned it around, got them where they wanted to go. Second thing, quality of writing. And remember, in this industry, you aren't up against, you know, people in a contest. You're up against 10,000 writers in this industry who are already in the WGA, who have already worked with producers. Quality of writing is pretty important. And by the way, this, if you want to elevate your quality of writing, it means you need to step outside the box of what you've already been writing, how you've been writing. And that's important because a lot of times people go, well, I'll just write more scripts. And it's like, yes, then you'll have an improvement of 3 to 5% per script. You need to make some big changes, some big improvements. You actually need to find out, what does it take to be able to sell scripts? What's the quality level that's necessary, right? And what skills do I need to learn to make that happen? Now, don't worry though, you can do it. This is the next one, not understanding the business. And sometimes I put this up. I was at a conference about 2 years ago, and I put this up. And somebody raised their hand and said, yeah, you know, I've been told I should read the trades every single day. And it's like, well, if you're in Los Angeles and you're going to meetings with people all the time, yeah, sure. But what this really means, if you're trying to get an agent or a manager, is, do you understand how to work with producers? Do you understand how to write and rewrite scripts at a professional level, how to take notes from producers and from your manager? Do you understand why a producer might give you certain notes? There are some notes that are about the way the script reads, but there are other notes that are about, if you make this change, I can produce the movie. And so it's really important that you understand those parts, because that's what you're working with in this industry. You're going to be working with producers. So coming in, understanding all of that will get you in the doors you need, and will have managers and agents see you as a professional. So then we finally get to lack of access, which is a difficult thing. It is a problem unless you already have strong contacts in this industry. This is something you have to work on. You have to have strategies for how to connect with producers, agents, and managers. right? And you need to be able to, have the kind of conversations at those points that work. So if you do all of these, if these first three are in place, when you do get access, that agent or manager will feel like you belong. And by the way, this is just as important. You will feel like you belong. And so this is every step that we're taking, everything we're talking about here is actually a logical process to get you prepared to be in this industry. That's why I kept doing those interviews. It was like, at one point, somebody said to me, you've done, at that point, it was like 30 interviews with agents.
Sure, I understand.
Why are you talking to more agents? And I said, no, there's some things I want to understand. I want to know exactly what they need. I want to know exactly what I can tell my writers that will help them get an agent or manager. So access first, if all these things are in place, then access makes sense. And then at that point, your job is to interact with as many agents, managers, and producers as you can, and start to build a network. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on, but it's just know it's absolutely doable, and it's just a step-by-step process. And then this one, disempowered by fear or naysayers. Let me tell you, if we just take this one right here, look into your life. Who doesn't believe you can do it? Whoever that is, stop listening to their advice. Now, if they're a best friend of yours, talk with them about anything but this. If there's somebody in your writers group, just know if you've got a naysayer in your writers group, what basically is happening is they're afraid they can't make it, and so they're trying to keep other people down. Just know this is something you want to keep out of your life. You don't need toxic people reducing your ability to believe in yourself or your level of empowerment. This other one, fear, this one, by the way, you can control this one completely. Just stay away from them or talk with them about something else. Pretty easy. Fear. First thing to know is anytime somebody is taking on a new challenge, no matter what it is, there's going to be some fear there, right? If you've never done public speaking and you're going to get up for the first time, of course you're going to be afraid. Just know that's just part of the game, right? That's just a step you take along the way. That's something, by the way, that all of your characters are going to go through, all of your protagonists. So use your stories to start exploring that and start thinking about it. And as you're doing that, take some steps. And just anytime you notice fear, just go, oh, that's completely normal. Now let me focus on something different. Let me focus on what I'm here to do, right? And don't worry about it. The one thing I don't want you to do is to let this thing of, oh, I'm afraid, therefore I'll never succeed, or, oh, I'm afraid, therefore it won't work for me. Those kinds of things, that's not true. Every A-list screenwriter I talked with, they talked with me about how they were afraid in the beginning and how they kept going because they were excited about it, but they still had fears going into meetings and those kinds of things. Just know you can do it. The other part to know is there are certain ways you can empower yourself pretty easily. First one is self-talk, right? Look at your self-talk. If you are saying negative things about yourself, if you're going, oh, they're not going to like me, or this isn't going to work, or what if they don't like my writing, right? If you're continually entertaining disempowering thoughts, you'll probably be disempowered. Just know you need to start being your best cheerleader. And that's a simple way to start empowering yourself. Start saying, I can do it. And whatever happens here, I'm either going to learn or I'm going to succeed. And either one of them move me forward. So that's a good thing, right? There are a lot of other ways, we've got courses on how to empower yourself and those kinds of things. But it's just important to know, take the steps and just keep taking the steps. Now, let's talk about the difference between agents and managers. And I'm telling you this, a couple of reasons. First one, you're going to enter this industry and you're going to be talking with these two. And a lot of people go, oh, they're the same, right? They're just reps. And it's like, no, they're not the same. Just anytime you're talking with an agent, you need to understand what's important to them. Anytime you're talking with a manager, it's the same kind of thing. Understanding their process also will help you make decisions. So let's start with this. We're going to go purpose, focus, and feedback for each one so you can see the difference. And this, by the way, let me just say this. I've interviewed so many agents and managers, but some of them are all the way over here. Some of them are all the way over there. Some of them are right in the middle. There are some agents who have become managers, right? So what I'm going to give you is some generalizations that will just help you understand them. And because of that, you can make better decisions. So here's the first one. The purpose of agents, instant business. And, you know, again, if you're talking to a small agent, somebody who is a one-man shop or a one-woman shop, they may be different. They may be thinking like managers. But at one point I interviewed, let's see, 5 people from the 5 biggest agencies. We had CAA up there. We had William Morris Endeavor, ICM, UTA, and another agency. And one of the things I asked them was, I said, let me ask you something. What percentage of your clients do you pay most of your attention to? They thought about it for a second. We were in front of a room of 200 writers, by the way. They thought about it for a second, and then this one guy says, no, 5%. And then the others were like, yeah, about 5%, plus or minus. And I said, 5%. So 95% of your writers, you don't pay that much attention to, but 5% you pay most of your attention to? And they said, yeah. And I said, okay, and that's because... And one guy says, well, it's because they've made at least $1 million or $2 million per year. And I'm like, okay, so those are the top money makers. And they said, yes. I'm like, okay, notice they're focused on business right there. I said, okay. So, and then what's the next category down? And they said, well, the next 30% plus or minus are people who have made 1 or 2 deals, you know, but they're at lower money levels. They're at 250,000, 350,000, that kind of thing. I said, okay, so that's the other 30%. You pay a little more attention to them. And they said, yes. I said, okay, then what's the next category down? And they all went, well, those are the ones that we're waiting to see what they do. And I was like, so 85% of your people, you're just waiting. And they said, yes. Now, let me just tell you another story so you can see this, because this is where it makes sense. At one point, I got an agent at a pretty big agency, and after he signed us, we were on the edge of a deal. My wife and I, she was producing, I was writing. We were on this edge of this deal, and he signed us, and then that deal fell through. He didn't talk to us for probably another, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. And one day, and I called him 3 or 4 times during that, and he never responded. One day, I call up, I left a message, and I said, we have what looks like a deal with this big production company. And I said, the president has looked at the project. We own the rights to it. And she wants to make a deal. He called me back 5 minutes later, and which was amazing. That was a Wednesday, by the way. And so I told him the whole thing. He says, okay. He says, I'm going to call her and confirm everything you just said. I said, okay, do it. And I don't know if he was trying to check and see if I was lying or something, but he calls me back about 10 minutes later and he says, okay, yeah, it does look like they're going to come through with a deal. He says, I'll be expecting a contract. He says, I want you to stay available by phone at every minute until we have this deal done. And I said, okay, absolutely. So he calls me back an hour later. He sends over the contract. We start going over it. For 3 days, we had 14 phone calls where we went over every bit of that contract. He renegotiated with them 3 times during that period of time. And on Friday at about 4 p.m., everybody signed the deal. I then didn't hear from him for another 4 months. And this brings us to the focus. Their focus is action, heat, and deals. When you're talking, especially big agencies have so much competition going on between the agents and so much competition between other big agencies. They focus on what they're looking for specifically is deals. Do you have a deal? If you have a deal going on and it's with a big production company, they're going to pay all kinds of attention to you, right? That guy was my best friend for those 3 days. Monday, he didn't want to talk to me. We made the deal. It was done, right? The next level down is heat. This means you have production companies circling you. You have big production companies talking with you. Maybe you've gone out and you've pitched your project to 25, 30 production companies, and 4 or 5 of them are actually thinking about doing a deal with you. This is when I called him, we had heat going on. The next level down is action. You've got action going on. Like, again, if I chose to go out and start pitching production companies and I let my agent know, I'm pitching this project right now, just want to let you know, chances are he might have called me back. I don't know. I didn't call him until I had heat. But, you know, that's action. There's things happening that could possibly turn into heat, which could possibly turn into a deal, right? Now, if you know that, if your agent isn't calling you back, if they're not responding to you, this is the way to get them to do that. You go out and you make something happen. By the way, if you tell them this stuff is happening and it turns out it's not true, they'll fire you instantly, right? That's just completely it. Like when that guy said, okay, I'm going to call the president of that company and confirm this. If he would have gotten there and I didn't have what I said I had, it would have been over right then. That's just the way they are. So just know this is what they're looking for. They're looking for instant business because they need to make deals. They need to create success. They focus on these things, action, heat, and deals, right? And it's really what you want an agent to do. And then their feedback depends on the agent. For the most part, when you're talking the big agencies, unless there's something going on up here, I don't think most of the big agencies are going to give you feedback. The agent that we had never once gave us feedback on anything. He was barely willing to talk about strategy. But I will tell you, when it came time, he did an amazing job of negotiating that deal and another deal. And it was like, you know what? That's what we needed. Now, the other side is a manager. And again, this is from all the managers I'd interviewed, I'd say 80% of them fit the model I'm about to give you right now. The other 20% were people who were agents and they were still mainly conducting their business just right on that line, on that center line. So managers, their job is to develop careers. And I can tell you so many stories about this, but at one point I was interviewing a manager from the company Heroes and Villains, which is a pretty cool management company. And I said, okay, so you develop careers. Walk us through how you do that. And he says, give me an idea of what you're talking about. I said, okay, here. And I point to one writer that I knew. And I said, okay, she has written 5 scripts. She has 2 scripts that are highly marketable that I think are pretty amazing. Her writing quality, she's getting a recommend on a regular basis. She's new to the industry. And he said, okay, here's how I would work with her. First, we would have our team read her 2 scripts that are highly marketable. He said, we'd listen to the pitches first to make sure, then we'd have them read. We'd give her feedback on those scripts. We'd have some notes meetings, those kinds of things. Now we'd pick the one that we want to lead with. We would then take that out into the industry. We would hook her up with 20 to 30 producers right in a row. We would train her to go out there and meet with them. And we would do the meetings. And he said, then whatever happened with that, he says, we would come back with the second script 2 to 3 months later, and she would go meet with the same people. So now she has built a reputation. They have read their scripts. They already love talking with her, and we've got a much, much better chance of doing business. He said, in the meantime, we would be having her brainstorm concepts, and we'd be looking for something that could be her 3rd script to go back to those same people, so that she built a strong reputation with them. And then, of course, as soon as they made a deal, then we would publicize that. Now, I want to pause for a second. He said all of that instantly. And I said, okay. So then I picked another writer who was in a completely different situation, and he gave a completely different set of strategies for that writer. So what I'm talking about is, if you're talking to a manager, this is a conversation you want to have with them. How can you help me develop my career? And if they don't have answers, and if they don't ask you the right questions, right? How many scripts have you written? How many of them are marketable? Pitch the ones that are marketable. If they don't do all of that kind of thing, probably that's not somebody you want to work with, right? But there's a few other things, and let me get out of the way here and I'll show you. Second, managers, their focus is planning and nurturing, right? So they're helping you plan your career. They're putting together like one of those kinds of plans like we just heard. And then they're nurturing you through the process. Now, this, by the way, doesn't mean babying you. So please know this. The one thing you don't want to do is come in and be an emotional problem case. This means they're essentially looking at you and helping you move through the stages of getting really great in this industry. And then when it comes to feedback, most of the managers I've talked with give feedback first at the concept level, then at the writing level, and third at the strategy level. So let me give you these 3. Concept. This is your high concept, right? One of our writers who went through all our programs, she was really great at coming up with concepts. I interviewed her at one point when she made a deal, and she said her manager has her send in 5 concepts a week. And she said what she does is every morning she gets up and she brainstorms 15 different ideas for movies. And we have a process for doing all of that. It's, once you learn it, you can easily do it. So she brainstorms 15 ideas, picks the best one, and she sends the best one to him. She does that every day, 5 days a week, right? About once a month, they get together. He's got 20 concepts in front of him. All of them are the best of 15. And then he goes through and says, okay, let's take a look at these and see which would do best in the market. He's helping her choose the concept she's going to write. That makes a big difference. Second, then writing. Most of the managers that I interviewed said they are willing to give feedback usually on the first draft and the final draft. Some of them give feedback on every draft. It just depends on the manager. So that's very helpful along the way. They want to make sure whatever you end up sending out or what they send out for you is the best writing it can be. So you will learn so much in the midst of that. And then there's strategy. And strategy is one of the things that most writers coming in the door are missing. And it's not a bad thing. It's just you haven't been in the industry yet. So strategy means they're looking like the plan that the one manager laid out for the lady who was sitting in the front row. That was, he looked at just a few things about her and he made a decision about a potential strategy. There's lots and lots of different strategies they can use to help you get there. But strategy could also mean not just overall strategy, but what's the strategy in this one meeting you're about to take, right? Let's say you're about to go out to one of the biggest production companies, or you're going to meet with the studios and on a writing assignment or something like that. They may put together a completely different strategy for you than you may have thought of beforehand. And that may be what makes the difference as to whether you make that deal or not, right? So every one of these, getting advice from your manager and coaching could make the difference, not just in the single deal, but also your entire career. Now, making that, knowing that these are the two versions, look to see which one do you want, right? And there are people in this industry that have both. I've talked with A-list screenwriters that are paying agents 10% and their manager 15%. And I had one guy say, some people tell me I'm paying out 25% of millions of dollars, but he said that's a lot better than paying only 10% of no dollars. And I was like, oh, good point. So just something to think about. All right, let's talk about why agents and writers work together. And where this came from, I was coaching a writer who was going to be meeting with an agent, and his view of agents was I don't know where he'd gotten it, but it didn't actually make sense. So I sat down and wrote these out because he was thinking, from his perspective, but he had no idea what was going on the other side of the table. Now, that doesn't mean anything bad. By the way, he didn't get that agent, but he ended up getting a manager 3 weeks later using all the strategies that we're talking about here today. So first, why do screenwriters want agents and managers? And why do agents and managers want screenwriters? If you know both, you're in great shape. So most writers that I talk with, when I say, what will having an agent do for you? They say access. And all of these answers came from a bunch of surveys that we did. Access was the number one thing. Getting me inside the industry, getting me to Steven Spielberg or Jerry Bruckheimer or whatever the big company is that I want to get to, right? And that's absolutely true. So if you have a good agent or manager, that's one of the things it gives you. Second is guidance. And we just talked about a whole bunch of different ways a manager could give you guidance. This is part of what happens when you get in the door. You need guidance, and that's okay. You're walking into this unique industry that has different kinds of rules, and there's all kinds of misinformation about it out there. When I first got in this industry, I was like, holy crap, almost everything I was told by my writers group was wrong. So having a manager or an agent who's inside and can give you real information makes a difference. Then credibility. Moment you have like an agent that's recognized or a manager that's recognized in this industry, you can call any production company and they'll take your call. Hi, this is Hal. My agent is blah, blah, blah. I was wondering if I could run a couple of ideas by you. And they'll talk with you, right? Because that's what they do. They talk with people who are on the inside. They're used to that. And then, of course, the negotiation, the deal, right? It's like, if we go back to that agent that we had, he was amazing when it came to this negotiation part. Other than that, we never talked. And that's just standard, right? It's like at that point, I wasn't at a level, and I actually didn't get to that level, but I wasn't at an A-list level. So he was only going to talk with me when I made a deal. That's that side. If you've got a manager, they're going to be talking with you on a regular basis. So on the other side, why agents want screenwriters. This first one is every agent I've ever talked with went straight to this. I said, what is most important to you? And they said some version of consistent income. Now, why this matters to you is a couple of things. If they start asking you about your projects and you pitch them anything that can't sell, they're going to immediately go, it's over. There's no income there, right? That's important. They're doing a job, right? They are living in this world where they only make money if their writers make money. And what it takes to do that is having the kind of projects that can sell. Second thing is paid writing assignments. This one surprised me early on. I was interviewing an agent and I said something about, what do you need your writers to be able to do? And he said, oh, paid writing assignments. And I was like, really? What percentage of your work is that? Because I was thinking, small amount. And he goes, it's most of the money that we make. I was like, oh, wow. So if you're talking to a manager or an agent and they ask, are you willing to do paid writing assignments? Please know the answer is yes, I am. Because if not, they're just going to assume, okay, there went most of the income that you'd make. And by the way, I had a conversation with the WGA at one point. After 3 different agents told me this was really important, I called up the WGA and got a hold of one of their research persons. And I said, let me just ask you, what percentage, when you're thinking of the entire WGA, what percentage of the income made by feature film writers is paid writing assignments? The lady came back to me about a week later and she said, okay, we did the search. It's somewhere between 80 to 85%. And it's like, wow. That means, I thought most of it had to do with spec scripts and the big $1 million spec scripts. It's like, please know, paid writing assignments, all the Marvel movies you see are paid writing assignments. Many times they'll have 3, 4, 5 writers who have been paid $500,000 to $1 million in that situation. I've interviewed some of them. All the books that are made into movies are paid writing assignments if you're talking about at the studio level. So this is where most of the A-list screenwriters are making their money. So it's an important part of the process. Then potential breakout success. So if you are a potential breakout success or the projects that you show them fit that, right? If they look and they go, wow, this is something that could turn into, a franchise, or wow, this person has 4 highly marketable screenplays in the same market. I can take this out and make this person a star. If they see that kind of thing, you're in business. Now, I want you to notice all 3 of these are about money. When you're talking to agents and managers, it's not that all they care about is money. That may be true about some of them. But here's the thing. Remember, they're in this industry to make things happen. And in their world, if they make the right decision, $1 million deals come from that. So that's their focus right there. And then finally, no drama. This one, I kept running into these. I'd be doing these interviews and I'd say, okay, is there anything that you don't want? And they would say drama or, problem people or any of those kinds of things. Please know it basically broke down into 2 situations. They don't want writers who come in pretending like they're geniuses, and therefore they want to dominate the entire movie making process. And I know there are some writers that are directors also, and in that case, they do get to control it. But if you're coming in mainly as a writer, they're not looking for that kind of drama. Second thing they're not looking for drama-wise is people who are going through a lot of emotional problems as they do this industry. And we had one writer who, she called me up one day and she said, you know that thing you said about no drama? And I said, yes. And she goes, well, I just lost my agent. And I said, what happened? And she goes, I don't know. She goes, I just started to feel like we were friends. And so I just started telling her things about my life. And I said, wow, how long did that last? And she goes, oh, probably we did that 3 phone calls in a row. And now she won't talk with me and she's dropped me. And it's like, yeah, they're not looking for drama. They're looking for people who are here to play this game, who are here to do this, who are here to make this happen, right? And if you're that, if you come in as that and you stay that, they're going to love working with you, and they're going to do everything they can to make you successful, right? Because that makes them successful from a money perspective and a careers perspective. So that's why this stuff it's just so important to understand. Let's go to the next thing. Now, how to become a great client. And by the way, anyone can do this. If you're somebody who is willing to do whatever it takes to learn and to grow and to keep taking steps, you know what? You can make this happen. You really can. It's just a matter of taking the steps. So first thing is the thing I just said. Agents and managers are not looking for problematic, unpredictable, untrained writers. They're looking for great clients. And I, in the beginning, the first time I was talking with a guy from Kaplan Perone, which is a management company. And I said, so what are you looking for in a writer? And I had an audience of probably about 30 people there. And he goes, a great client. And everybody in the room laughed, including me, but he wasn't laughing. So I said, oh, you're serious? And he goes, yes. I said, so what constitutes a great client? And he answered it. He answered it exactly, the 4 or 5 things that he thought made a great client. So after that, I started asking every agent and every manager, what constitutes a great client for you? Because if you could become that beforehand, before you walk in that door, they're going to love you. They're going to go out of their way to work with you. And I've got story after story after story about our writers who went in the door, sat down, had a manager or an agent ask them a couple of questions. And as soon as that agent or manager decided they were a great client, they signed them. Now, they had to prove, they had to actually be able to do it. So let's walk through it. You are a great client if, number one, you make money. Now, let's pause for a second, because this one usually is kind of shocking. I'm interviewing this one manager who is at a big management company, and he said that. And I was like, okay, but have you ever signed a writer before who hasn't made money yet? And he goes, oh yeah, quite often. And I said, okay, but you said that's how you determine if somebody's going to be a great client. And he goes, well, I'm looking at their projects. I'm looking at how they talk. I'm looking at their pitches, right? At the quality of their writing, all of those kinds of things. And he says, if I see money there, I'm willing to take extra steps with them. So everything else I'm about to tell you fits that part. But by the way, once you're signed, then your job is to do whatever it takes to make things happen and to create the success that you want. So please know that. All right. Number 2, and this is part of what they're looking at. You make great business decisions. Now, when you are thinking about this, if they're in a conversation with you and they're asking you, what would you like to write next? And you present something that has no hope of selling. Like, let's say you say, oh, I want to write film noir. And by the way, if you go to IMDb Pro and you look up the different genres, you'll see there are very few projects in the last 15 years that have sold that were film noir. So if you suddenly say that, you're kind of making a really bad business decision. So, know what makes the business decisions work. And this is one of the things I've spent a lot of time training people on, is to make sure that they understand. Like, for instance, if you said to an agent or a manager, I don't want to do paid writing assignments, they just heard a business decision, right? If you choose a genre that doesn't work, they just heard a business decision. If you tell them you don't want to write, that's a business decision, right? And so you want to be really careful about stuff like that, and you want to know what you're talking about. Third is you write marketable screenplays. And let me actually take it a step further. You only pitch marketable screenplays. We had a guy who got into Zero Gravity Management, which is one of the top management companies. They read one of his scripts that he'd written in one of our classes. It was a high concept. The script was incredibly well written. They wanted to work with him. And then he sent them 5 other screenplays that were not at the same quality and were not marketable. None of them had a pitch that could sell. They never talked with them again. They were just done. They didn't respond. They didn't come back. And that's how every management company and agent that I know is. They're getting thousands of writers coming to them every week. They don't need to talk with somebody that is going to lose money for them. So this is an important thing. And by the way, let me say this. If you're hearing me say these words, these things about money, and you're going, wow, this is all this guy thinks about, please know it's not. In fact, it's not much of what I think about, but it having to do with getting an agent or a manager, you are going into a business relationship. Therefore, you need to understand in their world, it is all about business. So you're somebody who's there to help them do business. Fourth thing, you're highly collaborative. And this works both in you interacting with them and working with them. You're highly collaborative there, and in you interacting with and working with producers. So your business is going to be writing screenplays and working with producers, right? And that you need to be able to collaborate, and you need to understand what makes somebody highly collaborative and what doesn't. Let me tell you what doesn't. This isn't about you sucking up. It's not about you giving in to everything or those kinds of things, but it is about you doing what you can to help make the deal work or to help get the movie produced, right? There are times when a producer is giving you notes, and if you've listened to some of those people out there who say fight every note and all that kind of thing, please know I don't know anybody in this industry that wants to work with those people. So they're sabotaging your career. So please don't listen to those people. What you do instead, especially if you're working with a manager, is when a producer gives you notes that don't make sense to you, you say, okay, thank you for this. Let me go think about it. You ask them questions to make sure you understand. Then you take it to your manager and you let your manager go back to them. And in that case, now the manager is talking for you. You have somebody else who has a stake in the game, who is there to make sure things work for both sides. And that's part of being collaborative, is making sure that this works for everybody. You do that, and anybody that works with you in this industry is going to want to keep working with you. Then it's about having the skills to create on demand. And creating on demand, this is going to happen all the time. Your manager comes in, and we just had this happen with one of our writers. Your manager comes in and says, hey, I just talked with the studio. They're looking for this kind of script. Do you have anything like that? And the writer said, not yet, I don't. And the manager says, okay, how long do you think it would take you to write a script like that? And she said, how's 15 days? He said, good. So she went into high-speed writing mode and wrote that script in 15 days, and they got it into the studio. Now, that was her being able to create on demand, right? Sometimes you're creating on demand because they're asking you to do a paid writing assignment. Sometimes it's because your manager thinks it's the right thing for you to be able to create the next thing. Sometimes it's about something else. Maybe you wrote the script, you turned it in. Now they came back and said, hey, we're going to go into production. We need 15 changes. And you need to have the skills to be able to do that and to deliver what they need. You've got that, you're in great shape. So then it's about, and this is our sixth one, you can actively promote your own career. Now, a couple of ways that you do this. Obviously, one way is by networking, interacting with producers, and that kind of thing. Another way is by creating the right kind of projects that move you forward, and move your career forward. Do that, and again, your manager is going to love you. So this is the ultimate thing. It basically comes down to this. You become what they're calling a great client, and you'll be in demand, And by the way, all that then takes is just you getting in front of enough agents and managers to be able to make that happen. Now, you've got that. Let's talk about your plan. So, first, do whatever it takes to get yourself ready. And this is where, sometimes people will say, well, I've written 3 screenplays. I don't want to do anything else. I want to see if it'll work or not. And they're not ready. If it's not the amount of scripts you've written, it's the level at which they're marketable, they're high quality, all of those kinds of things. That's the kind of thing that's going to have you be successful. So, second, elevate your writing to a professional level. And let me say something. I've had a lot of people who say, oh, I've written a couple of scripts. I'll just keep writing because the more you write, the more you learn. And it's like, well, yeah, you're going to improve 3 to 5% per script. Every once in a while, you might have a bigger bump to maybe 10%. But if what you want to do is jump from being a good writer to being a great writer, then this is going to take thinking outside the box, right? It's going to take learning professional level skills. It's going to take gaining an insight into how they think inside this industry and what actually causes people to hire you. Third, write to sell. Now, I'll tell you, I know that there are people out there who tell writers not to think about the market or not to think about selling. But I don't know very many of their clients that succeed. I really don't. At one point, we were hiring screenwriting teachers, and I interviewed about 30 of them. And one of the things I asked was, I said, so how do you feel about people writing to sell? First, 80% of them immediately said the writer should never think about that. And I stopped. I was done with the interview right then. Because I talked with producers, I talked with managers, I talked with agents, right? And anybody who is inside the industry will know if you're not writing something that even has a chance of selling, it's just a writing exercise. So this is something you do intentionally. When I talk with A-list screenwriters, that's the way they think. And a lot of the models that we have are based on the interviews we did with A-list screenwriters. I'll talk with you about that in a few minutes here. and then become a great client, and do that before you get in the door, right? Take the stuff that we just said and go through and learn those skills, take those steps, make that happen. Finally, build the skills to flourish in this market, because once you're on the inside, then it's time to do the job, right? And you can do it, by the way. This is all stuff that you can do. And finally, at that point, then get your best work in front of agents and managers. And there's certain strategies that you can use to do that. We'll talk about some of those in a moment. So let me walk you through a class that we created from about 125 interviews I did with A-list screenwriters. We intentionally were looking for, what does it really take to break in? What does it really take for writers to be able to succeed in this situation? What is it that the A-list writers are doing that's different than what you're doing? And by the way, what are the things that you're doing that you need to keep doing? Because that's also important. But that we put into a program called Writing Incredible Movies. And let me tell you up front, this program, just going through it, can save you 5 years of mistakes that most people make. And it can give you the strategies to be able to dramatically increase your chance of success. These are advanced strategies that are designed to help you create projects that really have a chance to sell. So this is the model that we learned working with A-list screenwriters and interviewing them. We start with, what's your pitch? And this actually came straight from an interview I did with a writer who had written 9 scripts, and he had sold 8 of them, and they had been made into movies. He said he always starts with the pitch first. Now, this is different than what most people do. What most people do is they get an idea and they just start writing. He said the reason he starts with the pitch first is because he needs to know that this thing can sell. And starting with the pitch, he said sometimes he'll go through 5, 10 pitches. He's brainstorming. Some of them won't be able to sell. Some of them are hard to pitch. He finally comes across something that he thinks really can sell. From there, he's going to outline. And there's a couple of reasons that he goes to outline, but the first one is to make sure that the story works. Second one is because when you write an outline, you start with a pitch and then you write an outline. By the end of writing the outline, you'll know if this is a story that you're going to fall in love with. So this kind of stuff is well worth doing. Third, then he creates characters that can attract actors. Now, over and over and over, these 3 steps I heard from A-list screenwriters. They weren't just writing something that popped into their mind. They were making sure that it really had a chance to sell. So each of these 3 we do first. That way you're ahead of the game. You already have a chance of success. And because you're in the midst, you've created these 3, essentially this is 3 pitches in a row. Because you've created all 3 of these, you know that when you get to that point and you're dealing with managers, agents, or producers, you are handing them something that's very attractive. Now that you have those 3, then module 4 is about making your outline incredible. And this is the part where, again, a lot of people are like, well, I just want to start writing because that's the fun part, right? But here, what we do is we build in multiple layers into that outline so that it's not just on the surface, that there are things beneath the surface. There's intrigue, there's subtext, there's layers, all of those kinds of things you build into the outline, because it's so much easier to be able to figure that stuff out in a 5 or an 8-page outline than it is in a 100-page screenplay. Once you've got that, now you bring that outline and we do a high-speed first draft. So here, I'm going to tell you the industry values fast writing. You need to be able to meet the deadlines. You need to be able to do what it takes. And of course, being able to write quickly also has you get more scripts done. So I'm going to give you a model for how the pros can triple their speed of writing when they need to. It doesn't mean you will always write at this kind of hyper fast speed, but during your first draft, you're going to get a chance to master it so that anytime you need to write fast, you will have that capability. Now then, in Module 6, we're going to do something that most people never do. And this came from a series of interviews I did with coverage people and script consultants. At one point, I interviewed 50 different script consultants, and I was asking them a bunch of questions, but one of them was, when people think their script's done, what percentage of the scripts that come into you would you say have major problems that should have been solved early? And most of them said more than 50%. So I know what this is like. On the first script I wrote, I had this problem. I did 15 drafts on it, and it still had structural problems. It had character journey problems, right? It's like it had major plot holes and those kinds of things. It's easy to miss things sometimes. So what we're doing instead of this is this. Draft 2, I'm going to give you a method for being able to solve the problems early. We essentially made a list of all the main big picture problems that writers have at this point, and we have created solutions for every one of them. So if you're going through and you're going, well, my script is really good, but my midpoint isn't strong, you just click on that one and it pulls up a list of solutions and you can immediately apply them. Our objective is by the time you're done with this second draft, you have a problem-free script. Now, do that, and you've got a lot better chance of success. In Module 7, now you're going to work with the third draft, and in this case, we're going to be elevating quality. We'll specifically focus on quality of your structure, quality of your characters, and quality of your scenes. So this is all still big picture stuff, but you know what? If you can double the quality, say, of your protagonist and your antagonist, you might have just caused that script to sell, right? That might make all the difference. If you double the quality of your structure, that might make the difference in how it reads and how people are engaged. If you double the quality of your scenes, that could cause people to see you as an incredible writer. So this stuff, again, is worth doing. Module 8, now that we've had all that other stuff working, now it's about creating amazing dialogue. So we're going to give you a whole series of different techniques that you can use. You'll go through and you'll pick certain lines of dialogue and write 5 to 10 different ways of saying those lines and pick the best, right? Imagine this. What if, let's say we took the 20 most important lines in your script and you brainstorm 10 different ways to say those 20 lines, and out of those 10, you picked the very best of each one. That means the most important lines in your script are the best of 10. This can have people consider you to be an incredible writer. Dialogue, great dialogue impresses people. Module 9, now it's about wordsmithing to perfection, right? And we left the wordsmithing until last because there's no reason to be wordsmithing something that isn't completely ready, that doesn't have all of these other steps built into it. But once you get to this point, this makes a huge difference in the quality of the read. And by the way, at this point, we will be focusing on how do you make it a fast read? How do you make it something that is impressive? How do you cause people again to see you as a great writer? And finally, Module 10. Now, these are advanced marketing campaigns. This is about how do you get in the door? So anybody who is thinking, I can't get in the door, or how do I get access, or no agent or manager will read my script, this will give you strategies for getting in the door. But more important, not only will you get scripts read, but our objective is to have you be able to build a network of producers, agents, and managers over time. So every time you go to market a script, you're going to bring more producers, more agents, and more managers into your network. You are essentially, over time, we've got a whole series of strategies for this. You are going to build a network, and the objective is to have at minimum 50 to 100 producers, agents, and managers that can read your script. But we've had many writers who have made it to the 500 mark, the 1,000 mark, and even above that. So you just got to have the right strategies, and you do them over a period of time where you're consistently interacting with people in this industry. And by the way, don't worry, you don't have to be the perfect person. You don't have to look right. You don't have to be the right age, all those kinds of things. You just need to have some strategies that can get you in those doors. This program, it's a 6-month-long program. There's about, well, let's see, we'll go over here. There is 100 different lessons in this program, along with 38 mastery sessions that will elevate the quality of everything you do. The normal price on it's $12.99. I'm going to give you a special for those who already know that you want to do this. You can sign up at either one of those links. And this special is for the first 10 people. So if you know how our system works, Cheryl's already programmed it. First 10 people get in at one price, then it bumps up to another price, then it bumps up, and it continues until it hits the full price. So for those who want to jump in right now, because you already know you want to become great at this, you can get in at $6.99. That will save you $600 on this program. We've had many people take it at full price. They love this program. This is the most advanced program that we've created for feature models or feature screenplays, and it will absolutely elevate your writing ×3. You will learn so many things during this. If you're not already inside the industry, consistently making deals, then this program could change your life. Let me just say one other thing. If you need a payment plan, you can get in at $107 a month. That's for 7 months. That totals $735. So it's a little more, but if you need a payment plan, we understand. Again, for those of you who are ready, jump in at $6.99. That'll save you $600, and you will begin right then. What we'll do is we will send you, as soon as you sign up, we will send you a pre-lesson on how to create concepts, how to generate your high concept. As soon as you get that, you can start working on it. This program starts on July 10th. So that gives you about 15 days or so to brainstorm concepts and come in with something that you absolutely love and that has a chance of selling. So listen, thank you guys for being with me today. I hope you learned a lot during this period of time. I hope it influenced the way you think about agents and managers. And I promise you, if you join us for this program, it will take your writing to such a much higher level that the people around you who read your scripts will be blown away. So with that, this is Hal Croasmun with Screenwriting U, wishing you the absolute best in your writing. Bye-bye, everyone.